Okay, so in this tutorial here, we're going to be looking at how do we use a colorimeter. This colorimeter here is connected wirelessly via Bluetooth with my iPad. My iPad already has the Pasco SparkView app open. This app here is very quickly becoming the mainstream data collection software after Data Studio. We're going to begin by pressing this middle sensor data button. So we click open there. Because we are connected via Bluetooth here, it might do a quick search of other additional devices you might want to connect. If you want to check which one is currently connected here, we have our colorimeter here, number 272004, so we're a match. Very similar to the spectrometer here, this is going to send in particular wavelengths of certain colors, ranging from violet through red. We have a couple different absorbance readings up top. Those same wavelengths are repeated down here, but this one, instead of tracking how much light is absorbed, it actually tracks here how much light is actually going to get through. Currently, we're defaulting here to how much red light of 650 nanometers actually gets through. If you want to toggle more on, let's say I want to see orange as well, yellow gets on here, you can just toggle this back and forth. And notice there's a few other default options, ammonia, iron, phosphate, and nitrate. Depending on your experiment, those ones might come in handy. Then we go to look in the top right-hand corner here. The page that it builds for us here, do we want to just see a graph of the data, maybe a graph with some tabulated values on the side, or just the meter reading here? For the sake of this tutorial, I'm just going to play around with digits and graph, so let's just toggle there. It's going to pull up the page for me here. We can verify here it's tracking red light, 650 nanometers with a transmittance reading. Currently it's reading 0% because I haven't actually started a reading yet. It's going to plot that same red transmittance reading on the y-axis. This is going to sample and plot in real time for me, and it's going to track every time it takes that reading how much red light is actually getting through. Without necessarily having to navigate out into the new page, new experiment, whatnot, you can play around with what you want to see. So let's say you want to change color or absorbance reading. I just press that top button there, and you can play around. Again, absorbance at the top, transmittance on the bottom. Unlike a spectrometer here, we really don't have that fine tuning. So currently I'm sending red with a wavelength of exactly 650. If your experiment called for more specific red light, let's say 660 nanometers or 640 nanometers, you would need to go to a spectrometer for that part there. But in this case here, a colorimeter gives us a rough feel of where we start. I noticed down here in the lower left-hand corner, we see that this transmittance reading here is currently 96. Currently here, I have nothing in the solution chamber here. This should be reading 100%. All the light is actually getting through. That's an indication to me that probably we're not calibrated. So to start calibrating here, we just press on that dial there. A couple different options. In this case here, we're going to calibrate our sensor. It should be able to detect that we're a colorimeter, we're tracking absorbance versus transmittance readings, and then it tells us to put in a blank. So what I have here is a cuvette. This cuvette here, most cuvettes here have two clear sides and two frosted sides. You always hold it from the frosted side here, let the light go through the clear side. The light is going side to side here. I want to just basically tell the colorimeter here, this is what it looks like for light to go through a centimeter worth of path length, going through the solvent, in this case here water. This one here should be 0. I just press calibrate there, wait till it's calibrated. Okay. So in that case there, once it's calibrated, we notice a better calibration. In this case here, 100% of light is getting through. This looks a little better. Now what we're going to do is we're going to actually put in our real solution here. So in this case here, our blue solution. I have another cuvette here filled with our blue copper sulfate solution in this case. We remember this case here is blue, not because it absorbs blue, but it's because it's absorbing the complement of blue, in this case here, red color. So because I'm tracking here how much red light gets through, I'm expecting this value to be fairly low. Again, just double check that the clear side is actually going side to side. We put it into the colorimeter here, just prop it in there. If you like, you can close this chamber to sort of seal off the external light. And we're just going to press the start button just so that I can start sampling that reading there. So it's plotting our first run here. This digit here is giving me the current reading, so 6.4, 6.3 or so, and this is plotting for me in real time. Every time it samples the data, it's recording data here at a periodic frequency of 1 Hertz. If you want more frequent than that or less frequent, you can play around with that afterwards. You see that it fluctuates a little bit here in real time. There's a whole host of different graphical options. You can add another y-axis if you want here. If you want to just zoom in on the data, I can just press this zoom in button here. But remember, without having zoomed in, these fluctuations here are actually a lot less major than we expected here. If you double check the y-axis here, we're talking plus minus maybe 0.05 or so. This sort of up and down motion is not all that drastic. So maybe better represented with this current 6.4 here. Okay. When you're ready to just stop the run here, just press stop. If you press start, it's going to create a new run, and we can actually plot multiple runs here at the same time. So right now, plotting, it's recording a new set of data here. Now you see it's toggled at run number 2. After we stop it here, you can sort of overlay it with run 1, depending on what you want to see afterwards. Okay. So I'm just going to stop that reading there. Okay. If you want to build another page within the same file, you just press this top left, this middle button plus page. Okay. In this case here, I just want to show you how do we start a new experiment. So the very top left corner here gives you the option to start a new experiment. So let's just do that there. If we needed to save down that data, you could, but in this case here, we don't have to. We're going to go straight back to that sensor data here. There are 2 other options here. Manual entry sort of lets you build the experiment, build what the pages are, change the axes, vary it up as you will. Remote logging here, if you're intending to collect data over a long period of time, you want to sort of wake up, take a reading, and then wait a long time, wake up, take a reading here, you might be able to play around with this remote logging. In this case here, just the sensor data, let's just toggle back to it there. Again, it brings up the different wavelengths. We showed you how you can actually toggle back and forth even inside that page here. For some of these experiments, there actually are some already built-in experiments. So in this right-hand corner here, we see these quick start experiments here. We can sample Beer's law or just a simple absorbance versus transmittance. I'm just going to do that for you here. And in this case, what it's done for you, it's already pre-built for us here. It's tracking, in this case, your absorbance instead of transmittance. And what it's doing here is it's actually creating a nice bar graph like a spectrometer from the violet light from the 400 nanometer end all the way up to the 700 nanometer red light end. It's actually going to plot for me in this blue solution here how much is actually getting through. So as expected here, it looks blue because a lot of the blue is actually getting through. Remember, we're tracking absorbance here. Blue isn't being absorbed. It's the complementary red color that's being absorbed. Again, we don't have that fine tuning of the spectrometer here. This is sending only sort of a rough 650 nanometers. You can use the spectrometer here for more detail afterwards. If you want to toggle back and forth the transmittance, we just press this top button here, and there we go. We saw earlier red was barely getting through low transmittance. It's actually blue that's getting through quite wildly. Okay. So just a way for you to play around with the colorimeter. Depending on your experiment, you can play around with the options a little bit here. You can even play around with some of these readings here. Currently, I have these digits showing. If you don't want it showing, you can do that there. You can zoom in, zoom out, and a little bit of statistical functions as well. Okay. Thanks, guys.